Hi, I'm Jeremy Crosby.
And I'm Nick Boucher. We're the hosts for the program that's all about your city, Talking Fitchburg.
Every day, we pull together the news, events, and information you need to stay on top of what's happening in the city of Fitchburg.
Find Talking Fitchburg on cable TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and our live stream on the web. Plus, you can view all our headlines and stories on Facebook, YouTube, and our video on demand service. This is your city.
Keep up with Talking Fitchburg and the issues that affect you and your neighbors.
Want to know what's happening in your city? Get Notify Me messages from the City of Fitchburg. Visit fitchburgwi.gov on your computer or mobile device and select the big Notify Me button on the left. Enter your email and/or phone number, whichever is best for you to get notifications. Scroll down the list and select all the topics you're interested in to receive email or text messages about. You'll be notified every time one of your topics is updated. Sign up for Notify Me, one more way to keep up with your Fitchburg government.
All right, welcome everyone to the February 5th, 2025 meeting of the Healthy Neighborhood Advisory Committee. We do not yet have quorum, so, let's start with call to order. Call this meeting to order at 5:36. We will have to postpone the approval of minutes since we don't yet have quorum, so moving right along to agenda item number 3. Public appearances for non-agenda items. Seeing no one in the building nor on Zoom who is not part of our committee and not already on the agenda, I move on to agenda item number 4. Okay, so agenda item number 4A. 4. Agenda review. Does anybody have items that they want to discuss for moving the agenda? I don't think we even can. Super! Moving on to agenda item number 5. We have a very special guest here today, Lorene Gage. And Lorene is going to give us some housing updates from the Housing Initiatives and Program... your title is the Housing Initiatives and Programs Specialist. And we are really excited to hear about these housing updates. So, without further ado, can you please tell us about what you have been working on?
Absolutely. So I wanted to kind of come to your committee to kind of share a little bit about what I do, what my role is all about. And then also, I think another component is that I know that you are working on the Healthy Initiatives plan, and a portion of that includes housing. So I think it would be great to have kind of a partnership with your committee in regards to housing, because I know this is one of the biggest needs in our community. So again, my name is Lorene Gage, and I'm the Housing Initiatives and Programs Specialist. And pretty much in my role, I focus on those two things, initiatives and programs for housing. So a little bit about me. I'm from Milwaukee. I've been here in Dane County for about 7 years. And my background in housing is I was a former mortgage broker, so I owned my own company with my family in Milwaukee, and we worked in the heart of the city, helping first-time homeowners to find homes. And another component of our company was real estate, so we also did the real estate portion of finding the homes as well. And it was a really euphoric feeling to help people that never thought they could ever buy a home to purchase a home. So it was a big, big deal. Unfortunately, just because of market changes, we had to eventually close our business. Here in Madison, when I moved here 7 years ago, my first role was at Housing Initiatives. I was a client services director. And in that role, I helped manage a department that did casework for individuals that were homeless. So these were also individuals that had persistent and significant mental health issues as well. So kind of getting them stabilized, and then in a home, and having housing stability was a big piece of that. Also worked at Moving Out, which is an organization that focuses on helping people with disabilities to also find housing stability as well. So that was throughout the state of Wisconsin, so it just kind of helped as a liaison between the property manager and the resident, and then just making sure that the residents were thriving in their units. Also served as a school board president for the Monona Grove School District for 5 years. Currently serve as the Cottage Grove trustee, so I understand the elected official lens as well. And I've been in my current role for about 8 months. So let's kind of get into the whole housing component. So we know that there is a housing crisis. And it's a generational housing crisis that's impacting all of us. Dane County is significantly underproducing new housing units, and we're coming up with new ways. So I'm a part of the regional housing strategy group that kind of helps out with trying to find new ways to bring more housing throughout Dane County. And we know, there are different components or different populations that are really impacted, and we know that seniors are really impacted. And here in Fitchburg, that's a big issue as well, where some of our seniors are facing issues with rents constantly increasing, and they're on a fixed income. So that's one issue. And then also seniors that are trying to kind of downsize from their home and find homes that are within their budget that are a little smaller in size. Also lower and middle wage workers that have to commute outside of the city or from where they work. Transportation is impacted, and traveling to school or to their job is an issue to have to commute so long. Then we also know that lower income households are really impacted because sometimes they have to make decisions of medical care or rent or other necessities, and that impacts them in ways like evictions, and we know that evictions are on the rise. Also, people of color are impacted as well. So what are some things that we can do to kind of help with this? One, increase the number of housing units that are attainable to low-income families. Increase the overall number of housing units. Provide housing resources and protections for the most vulnerable populations. And then also rehabilitate the housing stock that we have right now, finding new ways to kind of just preserve that. And then providing pathways for home ownership is a big piece with generational wealth. So one of the things that I'm focusing now in regard to the healthy neighborhoods, there are some things outside of this that I do as well, but one piece is partnerships. So really kind of connecting with property owners, property managers, so kind of understanding their needs, their perspective, and how we can work together to support residents, our senior population, and working with the senior center. When I'm doing a lunch and learn in March, just to kind of understand their needs and to have a focus group so that we can have their voice embedded into the housing plan. Some other partnerships, United Way, and 2 ways in that with homelessness. They do what's called a point in time in the beginning of each year, where they kind of count the number of individuals that are undergoing homelessness. For this year, they did a count for Fitchburg. They did not find anyone. That doesn't necessarily mean there aren't any homeless people, but they did not find any. So that's hopefully that reflects that we don't have homelessness. But and then also landlord education. So they provide classes or on a monthly basis for landlords or property managers to kind of educate them on residents. So for instance, if they're working with residents that have mental health issues, so kind of giving them support of how to help them navigate housing in that way. Road Home is another agency which provides supportive housing. So really kind of connecting them with developers because they provide a wraparound program for residents. So helping them with jobs, helping them with daycare, all the kind of needs that they have, and they support them while they're in their home. Legal services, so this is an awesome one. We just brought this to our community, and then it's the Economic Justice Institute at the UW Law School. So they provide eviction prevention services, kind of some mediation between property managers and the residents. So they will be coming to the food pantry on a monthly basis. I think more like the spring part of the year they'll be starting that. And those are law students, and they also have students that are bilingual. So this will be really, I think, helpful for our community, and this is free of charge. And then also working with the Tenant Resource Center, so just kind of in the infancy stages of talking with them of how they can connect with the residents. So we'll learn a little bit more. Development is another piece of my role. So I meet with developers and work with them to try to bring more housing stock into our community. And then these are developers of all skill levels, so ACRE graduates, which are students that attend Marquette that learn about development, and they have a program there that kind of helps them understand that development. So there's a couple of developers that I'm working that have graduated from that program. And really trying to diversify the housing market, looking at rehabilitating our current housing stock, looking at more senior housing, additional market rate units, and then subsidized units. Focusing on the plans. So just like your committee, I'm also working on a plan, which is the regional housing plan. So our current plan ended in 2019, and so I'm updating that plan and actually revising it. So I'm in the process of starting an RFP to find an organization to help write that regional housing plan. And then I utilize the other plans that we have here, our housing plan, our comp plan, city in motion, sustainability, and making sure that those plans, some of those strategic plans and strategies are embedded into the housing plan. And then looking at housing programs, so more home buying programs, down payment assistance programs, looking at working with the city and the county to get additional grants, and then home buying roundtables. So bringing that to our community is a focus. Are there any questions? No? Yeah, okay.
I have a few questions. You mentioned that United Way didn't find any people in Fitchburg experiencing homelessness this year. I assume that's not typical in past years. Do you have like estimates, or do you remember any of the data of like how many people they did find in Fitchburg?
That's a good question. I don't know offhand, but that's something I definitely can reach out and find out. Yeah, so typically I think what they do, and I've actually done it in the past, typically what they do is they go to like parking lots and they'll look to see if there's anyone sleeping in their car, and they'll give like a stipend, like a gift card or something, and then they'll fill out like a really short form just explaining, you know, what kind of drove them to the homelessness situation. So they did not find any in Fitchburg this time of year, so I don't know.
The other question that I had was, do you know any translation resources for either current residents or people who are applying to become tenants? You mentioned that the Economic Justice Institute from UW Law School had bilingual students, and that is at the stage of eviction, which is super helpful.
Yes.
And I was wondering if you knew of translation support kind of before eviction happens.
That's good. No, I don't know of any,
Okay.
but I think those are great questions. Maybe I could ask maybe Central Hispana and
Yeah.
Tenant Resource Center too as well. Great questions.
Is it possible that the reason they didn't find homeless people in Fitchburg is because they tend to gravitate toward downtown or to the tent areas where a lot of homeless people gather to camp.
Yeah, near resources, yeah, that's a possibility. But I would like to know previous year's data too, to kind of have a more informed decision. I don't know, that's the reason, yeah. I don't know. But I think they, from my understanding, they went through Fitchburg and then also the Verona area as well, and they did not find any individuals. So.
One of the things that's in our in the city's strategic plan, one of our sections discusses exploring the neighborhood improvement district model that Milwaukee uses. Are you familiar with that at all?
Can you explain a little bit more what?
No.
Okay.
That's why I'm asking you. What I understand, the way it works,
Okay.
from what I understand, is it appears to work like a miniature TIF district, where it's basically a special assessment on the existing properties to do certain improvements within the neighborhood. So it might be, some of the examples I found in Milwaukee were maybe things like art projects or planting additional trees or park improvements, that kind of thing. But it's not very easy to get information about it online. So, and it's one of the things that we're gonna, I suspect, be exploring in the future. But I looked at the statute, and the statute seems pretty broad, so there's a lot of things that could be done, but you know, you have to keep in mind that you're doing a special tax assessment, and that may negatively impact the people who are living there already, because their rents are gonna probably go up to pay for the for the tax assessment.
Okay, that's something I can look into. I don't know. Great question again.
I think Jessica was looking into that too.
The neighborhood improvement districts?
Yes.
I have not looked into them thoroughly because the plan hasn't been adopted
I
yet.
know, and it's on like a delay forever now.
Yeah. Yes, but if it does get adopted, it's definitely something I'm probably gonna have to, or the city, we're gonna work on figuring out. It's like Red City.
I'm really excited to hear that you're working on applying for the Dane County Community Development Block Grant, because I had actually emailed before this meeting the committee and said that I think this is a wonderful opportunity for helping with housing opportunities. So I'm super excited that you are already on top of that, and definitely let our committee know if we can help with that at all. That's wonderful.
I think I'm glad that's kind of a segue. I think it's important that I'm glad that you have these great initiatives and ideas, and I think if you can kind of send them my way, so that we don't duplicate.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
So just, we reach out to a partner and they're like, wait, I just got this call from, So definitely send it my way, definitely, or, through Jessica or however, you guys decide. But I think it's, great, because I think your voice is important because you live here and you have a different lens than even I would, because I don't live in Fitchburg. So I think all the feedback that I get is gonna make it even better, so.
Our mayor actually responded to that email and mentioned that it might be possible to talk to the Dane County supervisors about increasing the funding for the Tenant Resource Center in order to have like neighborhood navigators or in order to have like more tenant resource officers in Fitchburg. And maybe you'll get to how the Dane County supervisors kind of interact with this, with funding sources. But I'm curious to understand more about that as well.
Sure. I think you kind of hit it in the head. That's definitely an aspect that they focus on.
Okay.
I haven't worked on the county level at that point, that level, in that risk, more of the funding partners that I've worked with.
Okay.
Yeah. But in regards to the Tenant Resource Center, Jessica and I actually was it a week ago? I think so. I don't know. Yeah, I think
maybe tomorrow.
Yeah. We went to the Sunshine Place in Sun Prairie, and it was very wonderful experience. You know, they have a campus of different resources. So it was a food pantry, it was tenant resource center, it was a clothing unit that the social workers from the school district work with to get clothes. And then, you know, the tenant resource center provided a lot of services that I didn't even know that they provided. So, you know, the eviction prevention, but then they also kind of work as kind of like a mediator between the landlord and, you know, the resident. Also, they kind of worked with landlords if there was any new units that were available, then they can inform the residents of new units. And then they also provided like assistance. So if the resident kind of got behind in their rent, maybe a couple months, they could provide resources readily to the resident to keep them housed. So I thought it was really impressive of all the services that they have. So at this point, we're just kind of vetting that at this, the program and looking at it internally, and then kind of we'll make decisions after that. So I can't say that that's something we'll be doing, but it's something that we're definitely looking at this point.
Is that something that's connected with Madison's Tenant Resource Center?
Yes.
Okay, so it's like a branch office, not a whole new one.
Yes. Yeah. And they come twice a week, I think, in Sun Prairie. Yeah.
Since I know you don't have very many things on your plate, something else. I've been trying to get a hold of Occupy Madison to see what we can do about maybe creating a tiny home community in Fitchburg. And I have left at least a half a dozen messages there, and nobody ever calls me back. So I don't know if you can maybe rattle a cage over there. I'm sure we're going to need a new zoning category for it.
We do.
Yeah, but I want to talk to them about more of the specifics about how, how it all works. Because I think that could go a long way toward helping with some of the lower cost housing that we need, that we just doesn't seem to be happening. So I've had ideas. I've been talking with people, and I could imagine like building. I could imagine having a community where we build, maybe the city builds 1,000 square foot building or so. That would be like a gathering place. Because in a tiny house you don't really have the capacity to have friends over or even have a birthday party, because most of them are less than 100 square feet. But if we could build something like that and then have maybe surrounded by the residents, maybe have a fire pit, an outdoor fire pit, because a lot of people like that kind of amenity. Just some stuff that doesn't cost a ton of money, but and we can put it into the lot rents or whatever the cost of it, and it would still be far less expensive than anything that's out there right now. So I want to explore this some more.
Okay.
I just can't get anybody over there to call me back.
I am familiar with Brenda.
Yeah, and I've
Yeah.
known Brenda for 30 years, and she doesn't call me back. And it's like, Brenda, what's going on?
So what would you like me to do? So gather information or have Brenda to come to?
Well, I'd love to have Brenda come here and talk
Okay.
about how that's working for them. But there's also the question. There's also a question of, for this committee, how deeply we get into that, because we also have the housing
Right.
committee. So, but it's got to happen somewhere, and that discussion needs to start.
I think now kind of thinking, because I did kind of just talk about that piece. So what I could do is contact her, and if she is able to present, I would have her to come to the Housing Advisory Committee, since that's the housing.
Right.
And then you can watch it or come to it, and then I can just
Sure.
keep you posted.
That would be lovely.
Okay. Great idea. I like All right. So these are just some of the partners that we work with in regards to the healthy neighborhoods. Yeah, that's really it for that. One of the things that we're doing right now in the healthy neighborhoods, and Jay is pretty familiar with this because we shared this in council, but is the Efficiency Navigator program. And Joyce is pretty much has started this program and is keeping it going. But basically there's, targeting the 4 healthy neighborhoods and 4 to 16 units with tenants that are 80% or below the median income. Basically working on things such as installation, HVAC, refrigerators, window replacements is one that we're working on right now. And those are things that help the resident because it can kind of reduce some of their utility costs. And then obviously it helps supports the property managers because it's updating their property. So those are kind of things that we're working on, and it's not a major overhaul, but it does help the resident in some ways. So we do have another grant that was brought forward, so that we'll be continuing that throughout the year.
So did that get approved so that we can actually do the stuff?
We are doing the stuff, yes.
All right.
Yeah, and I think it will be coming to council, to the next council meeting too.
Yay.
Yes, so.
And so that's where, do we know where those buildings are, the 10 buildings?
Yes, but I don't have that right with me. Yes.
You're kidding. Well, I figured you knew, but we don't know.
So I'll have Joyce to kind of reach out to you about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so right now I know window replacement is the biggest focus right now. So that's.
There was windows insulation. I think there were a couple of heating systems too, weren't there?
Yes. So I think right now the windows are the focus, and then after that, then the heating piece will come. So just kind of talking about the process of how things work. I know sometimes it feels like, why don't we have things done now? But it's a process. And so really kind of starting off, I think it's you bring forth the idea and then kind of vet the project or program. So we kind of look at different pieces of it. Funding is a major component of it. And then also we have to look at the legal side of it and the sustainability of something that we can keep going in the city. Once we kind of get that idea, then we, as a team on the economic development team, we look at the pros and cons of that program, and if that's something that we feel like it's feasible to move forward. After that, then the next step is kind of working with administration, so our mayor, city administrator, city attorney, and various other departments that may be involved in that project. And then once that has happened, that all of those entities are interested in moving forward, then we bring the idea to the Housing Advisory Committee, and then CETA, and then on to Common Council. So it kind of takes a while, and that, sometimes it just feels like, why aren't we having this program? But it's just because it's a process. Other things that are happening are some events. Our mayor has asked that we have a developer forum. So that's basically kind of stakeholders in our throughout the county, kind of in the residential development, including city officials, planners, investors, any entity that's involved in the development process. So that's something that we're working on, and possibly around May that we'll have that somewhere in the city. We haven't decided on the site yet. We have applied for a grant through the Realtors Association to pay for this program. So more to come about that. And then also community forums. So that's something that we also applied for a grant from the same thing from Realtors Association to do some forums about housing throughout the city to learn more about what are the residents' needs, and then also include that in the housing plan to kind of inform that plan. So And
When you get dates for those events, can you forward them to maybe Jessica? And
Absolutely.
then you can let us know. I'd be super interested to either go or hear about it, yeah.
of course. All right, are there any other questions that you have for me?
I have a question.
Yes.
It's gonna be hard for me because I can hear my voice coming back to me, but I'll just try to keep talking. So yeah, my question is about the, I think it was the last program you talked about where you were providing, I'm just not sure if I understand it correctly, providing financial assistance for landlords to update properties, is that correct?
Yes, so the Efficiency Navigator program? Yes.
Yeah, okay. And so that's basically just subsidizing landlords' sort of improvement of their facilities.
Yes, so we work with Sustain Dane and Elevate, and they do all of the services or provide those updates through a grant that was funded. Was that?
Okay, so I guess my follow-up question, do you happen to know if there's is there anything that landlords have to do in order to qualify for that grant, for that assistance, or yeah, I guess I'm just curious about the process of that, since it's money that goes to landlords who, you know, at least in my setting, like, are doing pretty well financially. So I'm just curious about, is there anything that they have to kind of reciprocate with in order to receive that financial support?
Yep, so the thing that they have to kind of work with is they cannot raise the rent within 5 years. So they have to keep the rents at a stable rate so that, you know, even though you have these great improvements, that doesn't mean that you can increase the rent. So that's something that they agree to. But no, I think they just kind of went out to the apartments throughout the healthy neighborhoods and asked if they wanted to participate in the program. All of the apartments that are participating agreed to it, and that's pretty much it. It was not like a stringent process.
No, that's super helpful. I think the not raising the rent part is really the critical piece. You know, as we see improvements, we're always nervous about rents being raised. And so that's critical. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. Are there any other questions? Right, well, thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh.
So hopefully this was kind of helpful to kind of understand a little bit about what I do. And, you know, I'm also one person too, so I can't do everything. You know, some things you kind of talked about, like our county supervisors, there are some things that are more, that require, like for instance, the rents, you know, if they're increasing, there's nothing that I can do to, you know, do that. That's more of our local officials that you would have to work with to kind of work with, you know, make changes to our laws. But that's one of the biggest things that I do hear from residents is that, you know, unfortunately, when rents increase, it's hard to afford their units. So something that we'll just have to continue to work on. So, thank you again.
Did you happen to watch our last meeting?
I did.
So at the CETA meeting, Joyce was, I don't even know what the issue was. She was upset with me and Mark because she felt that somehow this committee was denigrating the work that you do. And did you hear anything in that meeting that came across that way to you?
No, I think it just happens just because, right, our plans kind of overlap, and that housing piece is where we overlap, and just ensuring, just kind of the things that we talked about, ensuring that, you know, when you have a great initiative or idea for a program, just send it my way, just because that is one, my focus, and then two, we don't want to duplicate, you know, situations. And I think that's where she was kind of coming from, that we don't want to duplicate that. So, but no, there's no hard feelings.
Well, she was pretty harsh at the CETA meeting. You were there. She was on fire, and Mark and I were after the meeting like, what happened? So I just want you to know that, we know you're new here and that, you haven't solved every problem yet. So it just.
Thanks, I don't know.
We're gonna give you another few months, but there's nothing about, I think the main thing is, and we talked about it quite a bit in that meeting, is that all of these different groups in the city, all these different committees, we need to somehow be linked together so that we can focus our efforts and get things done efficiently. Because, if we're here thinking, we need to do A, B, and C, and the housing committee's like, well, we need to do D and F, and CETA's like, well, we need to do G, H, and I, and it's like, nobody's getting anything done because we're all kind of pulling at different threads. So, I know you and Jessica will be working together to some degree, and we'll probably want to have you back at some point. I'm gonna, I don't know if I'm gonna do it this year or if I'll wait till next year's budget to, if I'm still around, I might be gone, but who knows. But I'm gonna try to add in the other 4 meetings so this committee can meet every month. Because we're only funded for 8 meetings, and it seems, especially looking at the Healthy Neighborhoods Strategic Plan and the city's strategic plan, that there's just a lot more stuff that needs to be done. I think this committee was originally created just to review the applications and deal with the Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative funding, but there's other stuff that I think we can be doing to help, just make things go a little more, maybe make things go a little bit faster in these neighborhoods that really need some help.
Absolutely. I think your plan and our timelines are kind of similar. So one of the things that we talked about internally is that housing component of your plan to allow my plan to kind of feed into yours so that you don't have to work on that, so we're not duplicating.
We have similar goals.
Right, yeah. So that may be helpful, because when is your timeline roughly? I know that it's like.
I want to say it's August, but that is a high goal.
Right.
So that could be
August for what?
the adoption of the Healthy Neighborhoods
Strategic plan?
The
The Healthy Neighborhoods Strategic Plan.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
Well, we'll see if that happens, because it feels like a full rewrite to me.
yeah. Well, and I think we need to also see what happens with the city strategic plan,
Yeah.
because that has a lot to do right now, currently, with the Healthy Neighborhoods plan as well.
I am so excited to hear about all of your initiatives, all the programs that you're working on, and thank you so much for coming. You are obviously welcome to stay. We are going to talk about the strategic plan now, so thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And I look forward to seeing what what happens.
Awesome. And I'll keep you updated on, or either through Jessica, of any other new initiatives that come by, especially that impacts the healthy neighborhoods. So.
Wonderful.
Right. I left my card too for you.
Super.
Thanks again for
You're
the presentation.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, so that was agenda item 5A. We are going to move on to agenda item 5B. Actually, can I ask, we can't go back to 2A, can we?
You probably could.
What did we do with 2A?
You can.
Oh, yay, okay. So now we officially have quorum, and we can move back to the agenda item 2A, which is approval of minutes from January 8th, 2025. These minutes were written in the agenda packet that was provided to everybody. It included some really wonderful, detailed write-ups of our motions. So I want to thank our note taker staff for those wonderful write-ups. Does anybody have any recommendations for changes to the minutes, or does anybody want to make a motion to approve?
I'll move approval.
Second.
All right, anyone in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Amazing. Moving on to agenda item 5B, Healthy Neighborhoods Strategic Plan Update Discussion, Data and Focus Groups.
Yes.
Passing it to Jessica.
I'm sharing my screen here. Let's see. Awesome. So we're going to start with the census blocks, and I've included a photo here that's showing the priority neighborhoods, and these highlighted block groups are what's included in the data that you're about to see. So there it is. Over here at 1, you have Southdale.
So Southdale is one census block all by itself?
Yes.
Well, that'll make things easier.
That does make things a little bit easier. 2, 3, and 2 on 1402 here. This would be North Fish Hatchery. 4 and 1, we have Allied, and then here we have Road West. So this is where I'm pulling the data from census.
So there's a bunch of things on there labeled number 2.
Yes.
Are those are different census blocks?
Right, so one's in 14.05, and that would be 1405.02.
Gotcha.
So there would be the
Okay.
tract is 1405, and the group, it would be, the block group would be 2. And then you have 1404, which would be the tract, and that tract you have the block group 2 and 3.
So, all right, so that's McHugh Road. So that must be Post Road up there? The heavy line that's dividing 1402 from 1404.
1402?
Yeah, 1402 and 1404, that heavy red line, is that just a random line, or is that actually a street? That must be Post Road that it starts with, that separates 2 and 3. Oh, it's, yeah, so then it goes to, what is that street?
Well, this line is, I know it's on the show, this line is roughly the city's boundary, but then we lose the city's boundary. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, the census tracts and the block groups don't follow the census, follow our city boundaries.
This might help you if we go to the next slide.
It honestly looks like the bike path.
Yes, the bike path runs, you're right.
So here is the city's boundaries and the healthy neighborhoods. And then outlined, you can see where the block groups are. So if we go back here, you have that 1405-2, and then if we go here, you can see where it outlines all the way down to Fish Hatchery Road.
Okay, got it.
Is that helpful?
Yeah. All right, so so if you go back to the other map.
Yep.
Which I had on my computer, but I don't know.
So this map includes some of Madison as well. It's not just Fitchburg. But the way that the census groups line up, we can't just get Fitchburg.
So most of that 1405-2 is not in our healthy neighborhood area.
Correct.
Just some of it is.
Right.
Okay, and then on the western side of the city, if you go back. So yeah, so that number 1 census block in 6.
Yes.
Where was someone drunk when they did this numbering? Why is there a 6 there?
That's the tract.
Tract. Mhm.
why is 6 next? Never mind. So
It's probably an old track, so they
number-
probably created new tracks later, so they have
Yeah.
to get up into the 14s.
So number 1 is Belmar mostly, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And then on the other side of that, so number 4, that's where Renaissance on the Park is. But also some other stuff that's not in that neighborhood. And then if we go back again. And so there's, so that doesn't have the medium blue you have there is not the whole, that's not that whole neighborhood.
No, it includes 5.06. There's 2 shaded ones there, so one's shaded like a little bit of an off-white color. And if you kind of like cut off right there, that half, the northern half is Madison, but then the other half is Fitchburg.
Gotcha.
You could use your mouse. I think that's the James Drive back.
It just works so slow. It lags. So if you go here, like if you were to make a square here, this would be Fitchburg, and then this half up here is going to be Madison.
Gotcha.
I think that line across 5.06 is actually King James Way. Can you confirm that or no?
That line, the darker line that's just south of block number 3, I think that's Monticello Way.
That's Monticello. Okay, how about the one
coming off of Whitney Road? I think that darker red is Williamsburg Way, and then you go up Whitney Way a little bit, and then you have Monticello Way that goes straight across. But they're only showing part of that road there, street.
Would you say the street or the cut coming across 5.06 from the top to the bottom, would that be King James Way?
No, I don't think so. I think that's, I'm trying to go through my mental Rolodex. Like, well, King James Way is the boundary of what's shown in blue on there. But this, yeah, that's King James Way. But the straight line, I think that's Manchester Road, which is
got it.
The one that's further west of there. Okay.
Does everyone kind of have a grasp for the blocks? We can always keep coming back to this photo to make it a little more clear.
Oh, we like it to be opaque.
And then, this just is further describing kind of where the blocks are, where the healthy neighborhoods are. So before we get into the data, there's going to be 2 indexes. We can also come back to this. But the demographic is an average of low income and people of color, and then supplemental is the average of low income, unemployment, limited English, less than high school, and a low life expectancy. So when you see those on the graphs, that's what they're referring to. Okay, so these are what most of the graphs are going to look like when we go through this data. And these 2 graphs are showing all of the neighborhoods, so aggregated all of them together, and this is the data that we are receiving. The ones that I would like to highlight are low income and unemployment rate, and then on the bottom you have critical service gaps. So most of these unfortunately aren't going to have any information regarding the housing burden, transportation access burden, or food desert. Some of them do, but most of them do not. But most of them have broadband internet and lack of health insurance.
This is this is data for just Fitchburg for those,
For all of those blocks I just showed you,
the blue blocks.
All of these blocks are included in that table.
Just the blue ones or all of everything that we see on this?
Not everything you see on the screen. The Southdale, so the only one that's not blue is the 506. That's kind of like off-white. That one's also in there.
Okay.
But all of the blue ones.
Gotcha. All right. I want to ask you a question about this chart.
Yes.
And the question is people of color.
Yes.
So we found out recently at the council that when the police department collects data when they have a call, they collect data on race, but they don't collect data on ethnicity. And the reason that matters is because Latino people are considered white. So when the police compile statistical data of what's going on in the city, every call that involves a Latino person is classified as white.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't, apparently their software doesn't have the capacity to differentiate between a European American and a Latino American.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what that people of color includes? Is that done based on race or ethnicity?
I do not know. I would have to go and look at the data information that I cannot actually access at the moment.
Okay.
So just to be clear, percentile in USA, that last column is saying like if the number is higher, then like we're saying that the census block, the census block data is like worse than the vast majority of the USA.
What it's saying, so it's saying like if you look at low income percentile in the US, we are at in the 89th percentile. So that means 11% has a higher low income value than we do.
Okay.
So our low income value is at 60%. So only 11% of the US is higher than 60%.
Okay. Yeah. So
That's why these are priority neighborhoods.
That is why these are priority neighborhoods.
So you drew our attention to people of color and unemployment rate. Unemployment rate?
Yes.
0%? What? Wait. Okay, well that's strange, but I'm also seeing demographic index and supplemental demographic index are pretty high percentile as well. So that
The
also seems like
demographic,
something.
those don't list percentiles. Well, the first two do.
Yeah.
So what is a demographic index?
That was on the slide before.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Okay, can you tell me a little bit more about the unemployment rate of 0?
I can't tell you why it's 0. It's just those were the statistics that were given through the census.
Well, apparently the whole state is 0, so yay.
So they may not have collected. Or people may not have
The state average
responded.
is 4%, but our particular neighborhoods in comparison to the state is a percentile of 0. That's where that comes from. So unemployment data is looking at people who are unemployed and actively looking for work, right? It doesn't generally capture people who are not actively looking for work or just are not employable in the current market.
Or are underemployed.
Or underemployed, yeah. Or just, that number is just not gonna capture a lot of different variations in unemployment.
Okay.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that? Would that number also not factor in people who don't have the documentation to work?
Probably so. I mean,
Okay.
This is based on census data. Census data is notoriously poor in documenting people that are don't have, that don't respond to surveys, right?
I just looked up the U.S. Census Bureau, what does people of color mean, and it says it often is used to refer to racial and ethnic groups other than white, non-Hispanic. So it does seem to incorporate both race and ethnicity.
So that means that in our priority neighborhoods, 87% of the people who live there are African American, Latino.
Non-white. They're non-white and potentially Hispanic. If they are white, they're Hispanic.
Any other thoughts on this graph before we move on to the next one?
Looks like we have a good number of kids, but not a lot of seniors in those tracks, so that's interesting. Mm-hmm. Or blocks, I guess, blocks.
All right. So now it's going to break it down by block, so it'll be by neighborhood. So we'll start with the easy one, which is Southdale, because it's just that one block. And this is the data that is representing Southdale.
Limited English-speaking households, 0%.
What?
Yeah, there's clearly some flaws and maybe it's people who just didn't fill out the census form. But I think I brought this up when I first joined the committee because we looked at data, and I can let go of accuracy as long as we're not making decisions based on the data, because I know many households in Southdale that are limited English speaking households, the majority of the households I know. So hoping we're not making decisions based on this data.
Well, I think we're looking at the data and saying the data is flawed. That's clearly not correct.
But I would also like to assume the purpose of this data is to make decisions from the data, right? We're not just displaying it just,
well,
right?
I think the way I'm going to look at this is, if I look at this and I see this data, it's like, well, that's clearly wrong. We have a lot of households that have limited English speaking capability. So I'm not going to look at 0% and say that we don't need to address that, because that's clearly wrong.
But that does suggest that some of the other data here would also probably be wrong. I mean, if they're not...
How do we find supporting complementary data to some of it that we know are absolutely obscured? Are there other ventures or other avenues that we can, collectively review and compare, or even just add as an addendum to this? It's a general question.
It would almost be like the city of Fitchburg conducting its own census, which would be like, I just don't know who else is collecting data besides the U.S. government.
Well,
I mean, one thing that's an interesting piece of data is that our neighborhood elementary school, which doesn't just draw from Southdale, but a lot of families from Southdale, and that's a school that qualifies for all free and reduced lunch. Nobody, or free lunch. Nobody pays for lunch there because the percentage of students who who qualify for free lunch is so big, and so that calls into question 28% low income. Right, that doesn't feel like it's probably accurate either, just given our school data. But also schools being, not that we want to ask schools for data necessarily, but at least being another source of information that helps indicate the sort of demographic experiences of neighborhoods.
I will say this data isn't going to be the sole data that's going to be used. This is just hard data.
Yeah.
So soft data is also being collected through interviews and the help of the committee, and potentially we're working on getting some focus groups. But this data helps in terms of the plan of identifying where the resources should be placed, so where the priority neighborhoods should be. And it comes from the federal government. So it's not going to be all-inclusive of the neighborhoods, but it helps to identify where we should draw those boundaries.
Well, in some cases, I think, especially over the next 4 years, you know, a lot of people who may not be documented are going to be very reluctant to give any information at all. But they're still here, and they're still residents of our community, and they still need to be taken care of. So, and I mean, other than going door to door and, you know, trying to talk with people, that gets very labor intensive, but it may be something we have to consider in the future.
The other thing with this data is for critical service gaps, it is labeled as a food desert. So most of these kind of don't have that labeled in there, and Southdale does.
Yeah. Well, it clearly is.
Okay, can move on to the next neighborhood. So now we're gonna break it up by blocks, because Southdale's the only neighborhood where it's just a singular block. So we're getting into North Fish Hatchery Road, at 1405.02. Let's look back here so we can see which one we're looking at. It's that big block on your right is where this data is coming from.
Can you? Never mind, I'll scroll back. So that's basically, that's south of Greenway Cross, east of Fish Hatchery Road. So it's going to be the View, Valley View. It's going to be, what's that apartment complex just to the south? And then there's that new building, the Terrace Glen building that has the bridal shop in it.
Mm-hmm. There's that one.
But north of there, there's, what is that place called? It starts with an S. I drive by it almost every day. You'd think I'd be able to remember something like that, wouldn't you?
What is, you're looking for the name of?
The apartment complex that's
Sun Valley.
Sun Valley.
I don't think it's called Sun, I don't know if it's still called Sun Valley.
No, they just got, it just got
owner.
sold, and they just changed the name.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're coming to Plan Commission to build a new building, right?
We'll see.
Oh, okay, maybe they're not. Because we had gotten an economic development update that was happening. And that's only east of Fish Hatchery Road. So a large portion of that census block is DNR land.
Yep. But it's changing. I mean, Oshala is in there too now. Bella Springs is in there.
Oh yeah.
So there's 3 big apartment complexes in the last 5 or so years.
But it looks like the way they drew this boundary line, that this is this does not include any of Swan Creek.
No, I would agree.
So, yeah. But it does include Bellevue, which is those 30 or so houses over there that are, I think those are all older people who live there. I don't think
Kind of.
Yeah, I don't know.
There's a handful of newer families moving into. It's an interesting place.
I'm noticing that limited English speaking households here is pretty high, so things like translation services would be probably useful. I'm also noticing lack of health insurance is pretty high here, so free medical clinics, anything that can be helped as far as healthcare would be good.
It's also a food desert as well.
Yep, also a food desert.
Didn't used to be.
And for low income, it's in the 81st percentile.
Yeah.
So pretty high up there in terms of the US.
Any other thoughts on this?
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the third block. Again, I can, but is it helpful for me to go back so you guys can visualize the block, or?
We need a split screen.
We do. Or,
So this is 14023. So this is
140403.
four,
Wait, that's what I said.
it will be here, I'll show you the block in case the numbers are.
well, 140403
Yeah.
is white on here.
14043.
Oh, yeah. Wait, that's great.
That's Hatchery Hill.
So maybe it is supposed
It's
to be
that one,
1402?
Because
Okay.
14043 is Hatchery
Yeah.
Hill, which is all those condos.
Yeah, it's not, disregard, it's,
Okay.
Okay, 1402.
Yeah, so that's going to be, that's right next door to Leopold School.
mhm.
So that's going to be Greenway Cross, bordered by Greenway Cross and Fish Hatchery Road, Post Road, and what's the road coming down next to the school?
Leopold Way?
Is it Leopold Way?
Yeah, the one that goes like south, from the school.
Yeah, and so there's some condos in there, but mostly it's old housing stock. And I bet some of the 10 buildings that are being taken care of with the efficiency navigator are in there. That's where Ridgeway, yeah, well, it's formerly Ridgewood, it's the Pines and the Fairways now. And I think they're getting a new name too, because that one just got sold. And then all those apartments on Greenway Cross.
But also about half of that looks like it's Madison.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. Gotcha.
But, so for here, the low income, it goes up, it's now in the 91st percentile. And then it's no longer a food desert, and lack of health insurance is in the 74th percentile.
Now, why would that not be a food desert?
They've got like a Wendy's and a Dairy Queen right there.
Yeah, but I thought a food desert, I thought the definition of a food desert meant retail where you just, like a grocery store where you would buy retail food, not overloaded with fast food stuff.
Yes, I believe that's correct.
But there's I don't know of any place.
Oh, maybe because just south of there is Pick and Save.
Oh, maybe it's close enough to the Pick and Pay, I don't know.
Yeah.
But 1402 or 1404-2, oh, we didn't get to that one yet.
No, that one.
That's a different 2. Okay. Yeah, because the pick and save is in Hatchery Hill. Boy.
I mean, I know people who live up there and they don't have transportation, so there's no way that they're getting to Pick and Save. I mean,
Well, I've seen, especially after we fixed the sidewalk, I've seen people walk
yeah,
from Post Road all the way down there.
Yeah.
But that's a long walk. I mean, I thought that the definition of a food desert involved having a location for food within a mile.
it might just barely be a mile or something.
But yeah, and I don't think Wendy's and Popeyes and
Yeah,
McDonald's and there's a KFC up there too. I don't think those. I mean, the Super America or whatever it's called now, they carry some fresh food, I guess. Like you can go and buy apples or bananas, but you're not gonna. I wouldn't call that a grocery store. So that's surprising to me.
Any other comments on this? So this is still north of Ish, a little bit south. That block we were just looking at.
Yeah. So that's south of Post Road, so that includes the High Line, and it includes the Pines. And I don't know, that's probably about it. Because the rest of it, if you move south, you get to the strip mall there with the Thai restaurant in it and the bank and Thirsty Goat and the office buildings that are back there. There's not I think it's probably just the High Line and the Pines that are there.
Are the apartments that are on Whispering Pines Way, are those also the Pines, or is that something else? Is that?
Whispering Pines is different.
Okay.
I
Is that
think-
included here? Wait, let me look at the map.
Those might be condos now, Whispering Pines.
Really? Condos?
Maybe not, but I thought they were in the process of converting those to condos at
It
one point.
looks like it does not include Whispering Pines. Yeah, based on like the map.
Yeah, that's gonna be on the other side of that line.
Yep. Okay, so never mind.
And then there's those other buildings just south of there too.
I'm noticing that each of these data sets so far have had pretty high-ish percentiles for less than high school education.
They are higher in the percentiles.
Yeah.
Oh. That diagonal line next to 14023, that diagonal boundary line, that's not Leopold Way. That's the rail line. That's now a bike path that goes over the belt line. That's what that divider is.
Well, it's like Leopold Way on the south, and then
Right.
north of Post Road, it's the bike path
Yeah.
is the divider.
Any more discussion about this block? So now we're gonna move into the Belmar Allied area. And we will be.
That's the wrong label on there. That should say 6-1. Because 14042,
That was what we just saw. That
that
was
was,
North Fishatry Road. Yeah.
You're probably right. I copy and pasted the
Yeah.
the titles in. Let's see if I change
It's
them.
probably 6.00.01.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should be,
Yeah, I think this is 6.00.01, and then the next one is probably 6.00.04.
Yes. And then let's see if we keep. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's good.
Okay, so now we're starting to see lots of kids. I think when I looked at data before, I noticed that Belmar and Verona Road had like all of the kids in Fitchburg. Like not all of them, but like a vast majority of them. And I'm noticing 64th percentile.
Also, the low income goes down pretty significantly when we get to this block.
Oh. Yeah.
well, the way that block is drawn on the map, there are a lot of apartments in there, but there's also a lot of older single-family housing. And that's why you're also seeing the over 64 creep up a little bit.
And this block isn't, a large portion of it is not included in priority neighborhood.
Limited English speaking household, we're still up at 91st percentile.
It's also
Lack
food
of-
desert.
Oh, and housing burden, that's the first one I've seen for yes on that. Remind me what housing burden means?
I would love to, but I can't at the moment because where I pulled this data from, their site is currently down.
Oh. I understand there's a lot of that going on right now.
Yes, so unfortunately that is out of my control.
I think that defines if you spend more than a particular percentage of your income on rent.
And
Usually it's within 30 to 50% of your income.
So I think you're right if it's above 30%, because 30% is the recommended that you spend on your needs, then it would be a burden. But again, I don't know that that's fact because I can't access the data at the moment.
Also a high percentile of lack of health insurance.
Yes.
I'm not aware of any free medical clinics in that area. Or like reduced cost medical clinics. Seems like maybe an opportunity.
Any more thoughts?
This section is also one that's got, it's probably about half rental units and half houses, but the houses are older. I believe, that may not be right.
Lots of kids.
Yeah, I was thinking this area might be in the Verona School District. Yeah, this area is in the Verona School District.
This area is a food desert, has housing burden, and is in the pretty high percentile for lack of Also, you see low income go up in this area as well compared to the last block we just looked at. And like you highlighted, lots of kids under the age of 5, 89th percentile. Any more thoughts? We're in our last neighborhood. I believe these numbers on the screen are correct.
That is correct. So does this include both the blue and the white portions?
So the blue, yes, not this one. So this one's this is the second block. So there's going to be 2 here.
There's 2 50604.
No. So there's one's 0602.
Oh, 0602 is up there.
No, one of these is 2 and one of these. But they
Oh,
don't
that's
have-
501.
Mhm.
Oh, okay, I see. Well,
Is that why they don't have the numbers listed?
there's no reason to provide that information. What would we do with that? So we don't know if this is the blue or the white.
Let me look at this real quick and I might be able to discern. Is this the same? Oh my. I think these are the same graphs.
Oh.
Interesting. The problem, like I said, the problem is I can't go pull the graphs at the moment to tell you which one is which. Either way, we're looking at the same graph on these slides.
Something that would have been a piece of data that would be helpful that has to be out there somewhere is, I appreciate having these percentages, but I'd like to know how many people we're talking about.
Like population?
Yeah, what the actual number of bodies is that they're counting, because 2% of 100 is very different than 2% of 5,000.
Well, it's not going to be the population that lives there, it's going to be the population that took this survey.
Yeah, but hopefully it'll be reasonably close. Obviously it's not, we know that there's flawed data, but it would give us some better, I think give us a better perspective if we knew how many people there actually were.
Well, when the site is back up, I can
Someday.
get you that answer.
Yeah, I've been wondering for a while, like what % of our Fitchburg residents live in these different neighborhoods? I think that the census data probably wouldn't be able to provide that data since the blocks and tracts are like including Fitchburg and Madison. But I am just curious, like, I'm curious to know what % of like all of our Fitchburg residents, do a lot of them live in Belmar Renaissance on the Park? Like, I'm kind of curious about that, just in general, especially because with our grant, we've been trying to allocate funds equally to all the different areas, and I don't know if that's appropriate.
So are you asking what % of the Fitchburg population of the total lives in each neighborhood?
That is the question that I would be really interested in hearing
Okay.
the answer to. I don't know if that data is available, but
I'll try and find it.
Well, it's
Okay,
probably
great.
somewhere, but it may not be available.
yeah.
That's true.
Because the websites are down. I know that Southdale has about 1,300 residents, or it did when the annexation took place, because we had that number at that time. There haven't been, I don't think, since the annexation, I don't think there have been very many new units built there, although there's going to be, maybe there's going to be 20 condo units built on the eastern side of Rimrock Road. I don't know how she's progressing on that project, do you? She had ADR, right?
Oh, no, we're going to rezone.
Oh, it hasn't been rezoned yet.
We're going to rezone this one for the 20 units.
Yeah, okay. So there's gonna be 20 new condo units there, maybe. I don't know how she's gonna get financing for it, because financing condos is really, really hard right now. You have to have, the banks require, well, the federal government requires that you have 50% of your units pre-sold before you can build. So she's gotta have 10 people who are willing to come forward and say, yep, we're gonna go get a loan and we're gonna start making payments on a building that's not even gonna be built for 2 years.
Oof, that's quite a feat.
I will say that I can say for certain this data is that blue block, because I added last minute that kind of off-white one. I was debating on including it since half of it, like pretty much exactly half of it is in Madison. So this is the one that includes majority of Fitchburg.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing an awful lot of limited English-speaking households, and I just feel like our committee could potentially do more for advocating for translation services in a lot of different scenarios.
I wonder why, because you had another one earlier that had like 17% for limited English-speaking household. One of the previous ones. That's fine. There it is, 17%. So I wonder why we have values for some of these census blocks, but for Southdale it was 0.
I don't know.
Because that just doesn't jive somehow.
It's possible that the person who was employed by the Census Bureau in order to take, data for this particular tract maybe didn't speak Spanish.
Yeah, that one also had a 0.
Any more?
Yeah. I was looking at the wrong line.
Any more thoughts on this? So our last graph that we have here, I pulled directly from the census site, and this is gross rent as a percentage of household income in the past 12 months. So you can see all the tracks in red. I've kind of labeled the neighborhoods to make it a little bit easier to digest. And then I've included 30% and up, since most financial institutions recommend that you don't spend more than 30% on your essential needs. So that would, if you're spending more than 30% solely on housing, it's kind of not.
Does that mean that in that census tract, there are people paying $304 in rent?
No, that's the total number of people, like households surveyed.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say.
No, that would be the total number of households. Total number of households surveyed. So for Verona Road West, that census tract, 16 of those households are paying 35 to 39% of their gross, of their income on rent.
So let's see, 309 divided by 878 is 35%. So for tract 1402, block group 3, North Piscatchery Road, 35% of our residents are paying 50% or more. 35% of the residents who are surveyed, or of the households who are surveyed, pay 50% or more of their income. I don't know, I just feel like percents are more useful for me here. But.
So
seems pretty high.
only 16 households in this first block group are paying 35 to 39% of their income towards rent.
That's 24%.
So if you did,
So another high one is block group 1, census tract 6, Belmore Allied. 96 divided by 398 is 24%. So that's a large percent.
so about 5% of the first block group is
I don't
paying.
know how they're even making it, paying 50% or more of their income on rent. I mean, if you made $1 million a year and you were spending 50% of your income, you'd probably be okay, but these people aren't making anywhere near that.
Right. And that North Fish Hatchery block group, you have 309 households paying 50% or more.
Yeah, that's 35% of 878 surveyed households. That's a huge, huge percentage of the households in that area are paying 50% or more.
Oh,
That is crazy.
It's awful.
I have a clarifying question.
go ahead.
How was the income surveyed? Like, it's easy to see how you'd get rent numbers, but how did people get income data?
I don't know, but
For
go ahead.
Nope, I'm good, thanks. But sorry, were you gonna, you said you don't know how this
No.
data was acquired?
I don't know how the income data was acquired, but I can probably find that on the census website.
Oh, so this is also from the census.
Yeah.
Well, the census form asks you, so it
Yeah.
may just be self-reporting.
Okay, well, if there's no more comments on this, this is all of the data that's been compiled for the update of the plan. And we are planning to use it in the next strategic plan. To kind of, like I said, guide why we're drawing boundaries and where we're drawing them, but it's not cumulative. It's just the hard data that we can find.
Did you look at data for any of the other blocks or tracks that were not in our already drawn boundaries to make sure that these were the highest needs areas in Fitchburg?
Yes, so when that map pulls up, the coloration, it's kind of showing you like where the more denser populations are. So the lighter the color is, the less like low income they are, or if it's like basically white, then there's not as concentrated of a population there that is paying a decent amount for rent.
Interesting. So does that suggest that specifically for block 5.06, that since part of it was white-ish, that maybe redrawing the boundary for Verona Road West would make sense, or no?
Which block can I see?
Yeah, so 5.06, currently our priority neighborhood includes part of the white block.
It does include the white block. That map, yes, so if you look at Verona Road West, which that's the one that I was debating on including or not, and that graph is not in here. So I was debating on including it because, like I said, half of it's Madison, so that the white part the data may be skewed because of the Madison portion of it.
Okay.
But again, I cannot access the data right now too.
And a big chunk of the Fitchburg area is actually a quarry, old quarry.
Yeah.
It's an odd census tract.
So, Jessica, you said that the darker the color, that was a concentration of low income.
So, okay,
That means-
that first one where it's showing the blue colors, that data, the coloration does not have to do with it because it didn't come directly from the census website. It came from the EPA, which used census data. So that, like, when we're looking at this housing data, when I pulled it up, it shows different colorations, and that's because I was looking at it would have been like one variable essentially. With the EPA data, there's all these different variables included, so the coloration of the block groups is insignificant.
I misunderstood.
Okay. I ask because I'm curious about other sources of data, specifically just in, my awareness of the inaccuracies of the Southdale data specifically. But notice that it was darker blue on that. It was the very dark blue chunk on that first map. And so I'm just personally, wanting some data that's more representative, again, especially if we're making decisions based on this data. But it sounds like that coloration doesn't include data points that are relevant or complete.
No, not with that one because it came from the EPA, which is including all of these indicators and different factors. So, but if you go to look at the census website specifically, it's almost like a heat map. Like the darker the colors, the more it's showing. So it's easier like with this graph. But the initial one, no, the coloration. It doesn't, it's irrelevant. But that's a good segue into the next point, which is focus groups. So we've all identified that this hard data isn't the best representation of the neighborhoods, and we're gonna have focus groups, but we need the committee's help to make these focus groups successful, so that way, when we include kind of this more soft data, the data we're collecting on our own, it is more representative of the neighborhoods and can kind of give a better picture of the needs of the neighborhoods. And again, the city and this committee will need to work together to ensure that those are successful.
And the listening the listening sessions are for what purpose? Sorry.
The focus groups?
Thank you. The focus groups are in order to collect what?
To collect more data, because we recognize that the census data is not representative, or it's not the best representation of the neighborhoods. So to get a better understanding, go to the neighborhoods and hold focus groups where we can collect more data, ask questions that give a more well-rounded picture. But to get the engagement that's needed, we will need help from the committee, because you all are residing in those neighborhoods and have the contacts.
Is there a budget to provide food or compensation, do you think, for involvement in the focus groups?
Yes, so we talked about incentives, and the idea that I've kind of floated is the neighborhood navigators who work now in all of Fitchburg, there's some funding in there for them to have events, and so I thought potentially coupling a neighborhood navigator event in the neighborhoods as well, to kind of hold a focus group, but then also have the neighborhood navigators there so that we could have some food to draw people in. So there is a potentially small budget to have some food.
And this data is to be used for the whole strategic plan or just for the healthy neighborhood strategic plan?
Just for the healthy neighborhood, not
Like
the. Go ahead.
Question.
Yes.
Do you know, or does anyone on this council know what other data are used to drive city decisions? Especially in the council itself, you know, what data are used to drive their decisions? Can anyone maybe shed some light to that?
Well, that depends on the decision.
Well, when it comes to like, you know, population and metrics that we're considering here as a major factor in, you know, any of decisions you can just, you know, think of in this case, right? Nothing exact, just, you know. So based on the same factors that we're looking at here that are driving our kind of decisions, what other data does, you know, the city evaluate, or how else does the city gather data in this case, you know?
Well,
because like you guys kind of alluding to, you know, the neighborhood runners, the walkers. It's like there's just so many duplicated effort, because I feel like they also, like many other departments within the city, require similar data that we're evaluating to make decisions. So how are they capturing that, you know?
Well, I mean, I can give you two specific examples. So the city right now is contemplating building a teen center over in the western part of the city. And that that's gone through a lot of, granted it's anecdotal data, but it's still data, and there have been a lot of meetings with high school students in that area to see what kinds of things they want to have in the teen center. And we've also looked at other places that have done teen centers and asked what kinds of things they want what kinds of things they put in their teen center, so we would have kind of a menu to select things from. And that gets very individualized. In Southdale, this year we're going to be investing about $500,000 in replacing the park equipment, and went through albeit a less vigorous process than what I would have preferred. But the Parks Department did show up for a couple of events out there where they were giving out surveys to people to have them fill out and talk about what kinds of things they would like to see in the park, what kinds of playground structures, do we want a park shelter with bathrooms, that kind of thing. And so some data was gathered from that, and then there's also the designer. There's a designer who's come up with a couple of plans for that, which I think have been sent out to this committee, so you can see what the ideas are that are being tossed about by the Park Commission right now. So, but a lot, like I said that earlier, some of gathering some of this data just requires getting out there and seeing the people in person and talking to them about, what do you want? That's one of the things that I'm slightly concerned about with the way we do our grant program, is that we aren't really hearing from the residents ahead of time what types of services we should be pursuing. But that's also a very time-consuming process. So, we've pretty much left it to the nonprofits to come to us with their ideas for what they want to provide and what they can provide, which is fine. I mean, they have more boots on the ground than we do, so they're probably a lot more familiar with the specific needs in those neighborhoods, since they're already doing stuff there on an ongoing basis. But I think ultimately we're going to have to get a lot more involved in talking directly with people to get the kind of data that we need.
That's fair. Thanks a lot for that clarification, actually. Yeah. There's a lot of those examples that you do draw does hit home, and we're familiar with them as well, and kind of how they go about acquiring their data to support their decisions. So thank you.
I think it was in December of 2024, I brought to the committee another link called onthemap.ces.census.gov. And I'm trying to look up the census block right now, but there was one more hotspot that was identified in that heat map. And it's on the south part of Fitchburg. So in the rural part of Fitchburg. And when I find the block and tract number, I would like to mention it and then request that we also look at data from that block and tract just to see if it, also potentially needs any sort of looking into from this committee.
That's the state.
Can you rephrase the reference again?
Oh yeah, that's probably the prison down there.
Oh.
Where the incomes would be very low.
Very low.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's probably what it is.
There's actually 2 Department of Corrections facilities down there.
Okay. That is probably what I'm seeing.
If there's no more discussion on the data, move on to the next agenda item.
Yes. Okay. Agenda item 6, report from department.
So for the hub, we met with Scott and Adam, who are working on the programming process and what programming is going to happen in there. We're hopeful that some nonprofits will provide services in that facility. And if there are any questions about programming and what's going to happen in the hub, feel free to email Scott. For the teen center, the mayor has said that the city will not be moving forward onto phase 3 for the feasibility study. They found in phase 2 that there's difficulty finding funds to operate and maintain the facility, so the teen center will not be moving forward. And if you have questions about that, you can reach out to the mayor. For the grant applications, they have they are submitting their reporting from last year, and then the applications are currently open for the 2025 grants. Those will close February 10th. We anticipate a lot of applications, just from the nature of questions we've gotten and new organizations reaching out asking about the applications. So staff would like to know kind of what a reasonable use of time would be for the committee if we get an excessive amount of applications. Does the committee still want the applicants to come in and present, or do we not want to do that? If they do come in and present, say we have around 20 applicants, it would be roughly 4.5 hours of presentations, and that's if things move very quickly. We could possibly schedule 2 meetings to have the presentations and break that up into 2 meetings. I guess what does the committee feel would be the most helpful when?
How many applications are there?
Right now, we haven't received any, but they typically we get from my understanding from Deanna, the applications come
The day of.
the day of.
Yeah.
Oh, really? They all wait till the deadline?
Pretty much so, Jay.
Do you know Al Cooper?
I do not.
Al Cooper is the husband of Frances Huntley Cooper.
Oh, I see.
And Al was on our plan commission many years.
I see.
And Al used to always say, people will take as long as they have. So
He's a wise man. I think that's oftentimes the case.
apparently that's true. You'd think you'd want to get that application in right away, wouldn't you?
You would think so.
How many, last year we got 16, 15. And there was one we got 16, but one wasn't.
Yes, we didn't
Complete.
bring it through because they weren't a legal nonprofit.
Gotcha.
So it's just something to kind of think about. What's a good use of your time, and if you want us to schedule presentations across 2 days.
Well, if we have 16 applications again, or something to that effect, I mean, that's 4 hours of presentation, because they get 15 minutes, right?
Last year, we tried to keep it to 10 minutes each. So 3 to 5 minute presentation, and then 5 to 6 minutes of some questions.
So 160 minutes is like almost 3 hours.
If things move well.
So,
Jessica, did I hear you say that one option would be to not ask folks to do presentations?
Yeah, so we could ask them not to do it, and then potentially we could ask for slides or a video recording, or we could just not ask for anything. It's up to you guys and what you think would be the most helpful.
I think there were a couple who just submitted a video, weren't there, last year?
Yes, I think there were a couple that just submitted video. Because they just couldn't make the time.
so I just want to get an understanding of whether it would even make sense to be able to fund 20 projects. So last year we had 15 projects that we were funding with, I think, $138-ish thousand. Remind me how much money is allocated for this grant this year?
Roughly 78.
Okay, so to me, it kind of feels like we ought to have some sort of discussions internally before asking 20 people to like come and present, because like that doesn't even seem possible that we could possibly fund 20 applications. And it would seem to me like we should at least do some sort of like whittling out at the very least. Like if we are going to ask for presentations, we should try and do some sort of like pre-discussion.
If that's what the committee wants.
I agree with that. I think we should have a shortlisting process and then have a finalist presentation to conserve time and effort.
Well, they're supposed to come with their presentations next month, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
So if we're gonna make a decision, we better do it like now. Yeah, the program, I think, is in the mayor's budget for $75,000, right? Which I think was the same as last year, but last year we had money from the previous year that didn't get spent. So that's why we had additional funding.
And this year, are we gonna have rollover funds?
Yes, a small amount.
Okay, small.
Yeah, there was, I think you said there was one organization that didn't do their paperwork.
There might potentially be two.
So maybe 4,500.
Yeah.
Quick question. How many applicants did we get last term and how many were funded?
We had 15 applicants, we funded 14. Which
How
is
about the
the limit of what staff can do.
How about the previous year? Do you know by chance?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
How about the previous year or the previous term?
Yeah, much less. That was our biggest year this year. I can tell you, just a sec.
It looks like in 2023, there were 9 applicants, and we at least initially proposed funding 7 of the 9. But maybe Deanna has more
Okay.
information.
We should expect maybe 12 to 15 applicants this year still. Got it.
Is it mostly the opportunity of being able to ask questions that the presentations offer over just the data from the grant application?
I would like to assume so.
I think some advantages that might come from the presentation, you all, yes, can have a bit of interaction. There's an opportunity for something a little bit more visual with slides. There's an opportunity to just kind of have that personal connection other than looking at a stack of papers, right? So.
When is the deadline again?
The 10th.
So like 2 days from now.
5 days.
5 days from now. I don't know what day it is.
So if last year we had approximately $140,000 and we funded 14 applicants, and this year we have $80,000 approximately, then we could fund maybe 8 applicants at that level. So yeah, that's where I'm just like, why would we ask 20 people to come in if we only have capacity to fund potentially 8?
That's a fair point.
But right now, we don't have any applications at all.
Well, sure.
So who knows? You had received some feedback that, I believe you said that you had received some feedback that it was too cumbersome for some of these organizations, given the small amount of money they might actually get. So
I think that was something that Jessica, you brought up with your interviews, that.
Yes, I don't think it was the initial presentation for the funding. I think it was more the mid-year presentation that was a lot for them.
I see. Well, yeah, because in the middle of the summer, they're out doing all their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, if we're not anticipating that it's like really going to shape the decision. Just in my, obviously folks doing nonprofit work are just really, busy folks doing really important work. And so I think if we don't need to do the presentations, or if it doesn't feel feasible, I love the interaction. I love being able to meet folks and see folks, but I just want to kind of be respectful of what we're asking of them. So my vote would be if we don't feel like we really need it to inform our decision, then it seems worth considering just not requiring it of folks or asking it of folks.
Well, I guess another question is so basically Monday is the deadline to get their stuff in.
Right.
And if we want to try to pare that down before our meeting in March, how would we go about doing that? Because, legally, we probably can't conduct a meeting via email.
You cannot.
The attorney gets very upset about that.
We would have to try to schedule.
We'd have to do a special meeting.
We'd have to try to schedule a special meeting.
And then there'd have to be a budget amendment to fund it. And
Don't do that to me.
well, I can write the budget amendment, but
Jessica, can you remind us, what was the plan for, the 8 meetings this year?
Yeah, let me stop sharing this. I can figure out. So I know in March, they would come and present. April, you would score and choose who gets the funding. And then after that,
I mean, if we could do that.
Well, that's being looked up. Well, that's being looked up. During the summer, wasn't there like a month that we didn't meet, or a couple months that we didn't meet?
Yes, there's 8. 1 second here. So, looks like March, they're set to present. April, review. May would be no meeting. June would be presentation from the 2024 grantees. July would be the same. August would be that mid-year check-in with the 2025 grantees that I think we've omitted, and so that meeting we would do something else. And then October, we would talk about the Healthy Neighborhood Strategic Plan implementation update is the current schedule for 2025.
We haven't yet really talked in depth about a plan for updating the strategic plan for this committee, and it would be interesting to potentially get an extra session back. If we didn't do the presentations in March, then we could move the April discussion of the grant applications to that slot in March, and vote on applications in March, and then April we could have available for other things, such as, for example, a strategic plan.
Is that something the committee wants to do?
Are there any other thoughts from people online?
So what are we trying to do here is take away, we have a vacant month in the summer. We're trying to substitute that with the review of the, what?
No, so sorry. What I was thinking out loud about was that if we did not, okay, so the question on the table is, do we ask the applicants for the 2025 grant to present before we make any sort of decisions, like present to us in person before we make any sort of decisions on awarding money? And that is the question on the table that we're trying to discuss. So the March 2025 meeting, the next one, do we have presentations or do we not have presentations from 2025 applications? And so the discussion so far has mostly been that, it would take like 3 hours of our time, of their time. It would be, potentially a lot of applicants who wouldn't even be able to receive funding in the end. So it would kind of be like a waste of their time. But, we would get to meet them in person and ask questions of them. So there's pros and cons of having the presentations in March, this next meeting. And so the question is, do we want to have applicants present in March, or do we not want to have applicants present in March, and instead, what we would do instead is we would just discuss their applications and maybe even decide on funding at that point?
That's a question.
Yeah.
I would like if of the committee can, who have had previous experience with these presentations and this previous schematics of review and approval of grants and applications, speak on the value of the presentations, if there is and if there is none, and how does that weigh into your decision-making factors? Because I have not had the privilege to experience that, to be exposed to that on this council, so.
The value is great, but I think also just because of rush of time, rush of time because of right now at this point with nobody doing applications, because last year we were able to actually talk about some things. People were actually able to bring up some questions about, this sounds like a great opportunity, but I'm not understanding more, so we should have them come in, And then also just the extra amount of money that was there, it was able, we were able to just give off so many things that were like, okay, let's be really intentional about out of all these folks. That's where the idea of coming up with like, oh, well, folks don't, if there's all these different programs, but we see that some people are asking for more money than we possibly think they need, then maybe we could also move funding around. But with it's a shortage, quote unquote, of money this year, and just a rush of time, I would vote that we would just use that time to just communicate as a group versus the presentation. Again, I think the presentations are great, but I think the presentations are helpful or good to have when there's an extra plethora of time.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree from my experience from last year. It was really nice to meet people, but and I was able to ask questions of them. And that was helpful for me, but I'm not certain that it changed a lot of my decisions as far as like awarding funds. It just helped me understand what they're doing and what they're seeing for needs in the community, which is all really important information, really valuable for us. But I don't think that it really changed much about my opinions on like how we would fund it, because I mean, basically everybody just presented like, hey, our communities need a lot of help. Like if you can give us the money, then we'll, help community. So that was my experience.
Thank you.
I like the idea of having them come in to make a formal ask for what they want. I think that interaction is the most important thing. I don't know that the mid-year update is necessarily very helpful, and I think
they're not going to do a mid-year update.
We decided to scrap that after this year, right? And I think at the end of the year, I don't think we need to have them come in for that meeting either. That they can do as a written summary that says, this is what we did, these are the people that helped. We can give them a list of the information we want from them, but I think I get the idea that we don't want to drag people to meetings that they don't need to be at, because that's a waste of everybody's time. But on the other hand, it's helpful to have those people in the room and be able to talk to them about what they're going to do, and you can get a read as to whether they're actually capable of doing what they're saying they're going to do. I mean, last year we had all that extra money because it didn't all get awarded for the previous year. I would prefer to never have that situation. I'd prefer to have a situation where we award every penny every year and everybody does what they say they're going to do, and then, life is beautiful. But I also get the idea that, if we get 16 applications and we have, slightly more than half the money we had last year, some of them are not going to get funded. And I wish that we had a better way of being able to weed that out. I mean, I guess if we don't do, maybe it's enough money to award 8 people. So out of the applications we get, maybe we select 10 to come in for an interview. Now, how we do that, that's going to require a meeting. So we could say that we scrap one of the other meetings later in the year and just use the funding from that for a meeting later this month, so that we can go through and decide which ones are not going to be invited in for an interview. To me, that would seem a more ideal situation than just saying, we're going to trust you, come on in, don't bother coming in. I don't know, I mean, it's just my thought on it. I like to see people face to face.
Thanks for that. Thank you very much. Yeah, I still sit a little bit on the fence with that one, in all honesty. But yeah. I'm willing to see maybe how many. I'm really interested to see how many applicants we get, and then. But I think, as you guys, pretty much everyone has already alluded to, we have to be time conscious as well. So, yeah.
Would it make sense to ask people for a 5-minute presentation instead of a 10-minute presentation, or do
Well, they present for 2 to 3 minutes, and then the rest of the time is used for questions.
Oh, well, never mind.
Why don't we see what the number of applications we are, what we get,
And
and then we'll reach out to the committee with that number. After we've confirmed that we have a certain number of viable, complete applications, we'll reach out to the committee and put together a couple options and just look for your feedback.
Yeah, so for the people who are present, what do people think about if there's 10 or more, if there's 10 or fewer, then we just say you come in for the initial presentation. And if there's more than 10 applicants, then we communicate by email and potentially have a special meeting, maybe?
Sure. Since you're looking at me.
You're like the only committee member in the room.
I know. I think that's fine. We could, as my mental gears are grinding here, we could just tell them that they can come by, they can attend by Zoom, and they don't actually have to come here. I know a couple of them like to bring a PowerPoint thing and do the song and dance, and I appreciate that too.
Yeah, and I think that's always the option. I guess the larger question is what's valuable for your time, right? What's fair to each one of the applicants and what's valuable to your time.
I think I saw both Sharif and Gerard unmute at one point. Sharif, do you want to chime in?
Nah, not at the moment. I still sit on the fence a bit. I think, I'm leaning both ways because I do see the value in as much as I haven't even gotten the privilege to. I know when the applications come in, and based on the type of questions that were on the applications to begin with, I was kind of in allure that there will be presentations to follow those, earlier discussions, at least in previous meetings, and to just have to make that decision now before even having a count on an application, before, reviewing responses, to the applications, and even questions that may arise, upon reviewing those, those responses. It's like, if I'm voting on nullifying that opportunity right now, then that just handicaps, the decision making, or maybe just prolongs it, at least in my interpretation, a bit more. But I guess maybe when we get to that junction, we'll cross that. But yeah.
And Gerard, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, Sharif might hate me and just because we won't have that meeting. I think that we should do it, just because, sometimes, extra information come out that we're aware of or whatever. But again, I agree with the fact that it should go down based on the folks we think we would likely give grants to. But I think, if the time is available, that we do it, because I think that's pretty valuable. Obviously, it's not, of course, they gotta want to come in to do it anyway, and that's no guarantee that if there's 10, 16 applicants, that all of them would make it anyway.
Yep. Caitlin, anything final words on this question?
I think if your proposal is the one that is standing right now, that if we get 10 or fewer, then we move forward with presentations, and if not, we whittle down before. I can accept that. I'm always happy to ask less of people applying for grants, so that kind of continues to be my stance. But I can appreciate what we can gain from a conversation with folks. So if that's what the committee wants, then I'm fine with that.
Super.
How about we wait and see how many applications we get, and staff will let the committee know, and then we move from there.
Lovely.
All right, have your people type it and I'll sign it.
Yeah. I wanted to go back to something that you said about during the report from department, where you said that the teen center is not going to move forward on phase 3, and you said something about like money for operations wasn't there, and I really wanted on record that I think it's absolutely terrible that is holding up the teen center when there's not money, in my opinion, for the operation of the police facility that is being built, the $40 million police facility. And for some reason, the police facility is continuing to move forward. And now the teen center, which would help underprivileged teens in our community, as opposed to helping police, which is also important, but I think that it's terrible that this teen center is not moving forward. And I don't know if anybody else wants to say anything on that, but yes, I wanted to pause and say that.
I thought we were moving forward with the teen center to do phase 3. And I thought the council voted on that. So I am just astounded to hear that's not happening. And I sent an email to the mayor and to one of the alders over there, to Joe, because he's been working very hard on it. And I want an explanation as to why that decision was made. The questions people in the community have been asking, which is, how's it going to operate? What services is it going to provide? Those were the questions that were going to be answered in phase 3. So it seems like this is being stopped prematurely. I don't expect you to answer those questions.
I was going to say, if you have questions or comments, you can send them to the mayor.
Yes, which I have done while we're sitting here, because I'm astounded.
But those are all of the staff updates.
Okay. I would be interested in knowing more about like where the information came from, because I was under the exact same impression that phase 3 was moving forward, that council had voted to move forward with phase 3. So, but now you're providing different information. I don't know where your information is coming from. I trust your information, but like, I'm just, yeah.
It's from the mayor.
Thank you. Agenda items?
I'll say that I agree. I agree with Ari and Jay. That is devastating news to hear.
I think that I'm sure that I will hear back that the failed referendum put a lot of pressure on, because there's a very big driving need to get the police station built and funded. And that's going to cost $500,000 a year. That should have been paid for in the referendum, but the referendum failed. And so I'm sure the mayor's already starting to work on the budget for next year to try to figure out where all this money is going to come from. But that still is not, this is not the way that that sort of decision should be made and discussed and rolled out to the public. So I am unhappy.
Agenda item number 7, announcements. It says next meeting is March 5th. Grant applications will present to HNAC. We already previously in this meeting mentioned that there may or may not be a special meeting prior to that. We'll receive more instructions via email. I got an email also saying that the Leopold Arbor Hills neighborhood.
The NRT, the community meal. Yes,
Yeah.
that's March 11th from 5:30 to 7, if anyone would like to attend.
At Aldo Leopold Elementary School.
Yes.
There's also a meeting with I think it's the Neighborhood Navigators? I'm not sure. The Arbor Hills Neighborhood Resource Team. That is going to be held on Wednesday, February 12th. That was also mentioned in this email. At 2 p.m., perhaps over Zoom. Yeah. I think it was sent to everybody on this committee, so I wanted to mention that. Any other announcements? Hearing none. Agenda item number 8, adjournment. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So
Any seconds?
I'll second.
Yay! All right. Meeting adjourned at 7:55 p.m. Thank you, everyone.